So, welcome to Dr. Cathy Collinge Herrera. You taught and performed across 4 continents. You are one of the founders of the Flutopia Initiative. It's the Festivales Internacionales de Flautistas. You are also an NFA competitions winner, and you are a Pennsylvania Arts Council rostered artist. You're also a composer. You're published by Ulrey and Theodore Presser, and you also teach at Juniata College, alongside a lot of other accomplishments, which I have discovered. But it seems like your early career in education led you to Peru, which then sort of from there kind of exploded into all the things that you have since accomplished and continue to do. Can you tell me what led you to go to Peru in the first place and sort of all the things that have blossomed from that?
Sure. I hope that this serves as an encouragement for flutists that are studying and have a certain trajectory for their careers, because what happened for me was I was in Madison, Wisconsin, working on my master's degree with Robert Cole, and I was getting close to graduation for that. And so I thought, okay, I need to start looking into possibilities for what happens next, hopefully a job, right? And so and in Madison, they had in the office a binder that housed all of the job openings. This is back in the day before we all used internet so widely. But anyway, so there was this binder, and I went to the tab for flute, and there were only 2 job openings for flutists at that time, and they all required a PhD. And I was just finishing up my master's, and I thought, oh, great. Now what? And so I started to, I looked for audition opportunities. And of course, we all know that for the major orchestras, you have to be invited to audition. And so there was one opening, and I auditioned, and I was grateful to have the opportunity to audition. And, but you get 3 to 5 minutes to express your best self, and that I didn't have a whole lot of experience playing the behind the screen auditions, and so I didn't get that job. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do here? And so I did go to the grants and contracts office at the university, and I piled the brochures for every study abroad, all kinds of different opportunities that could remotely relate to music and being a flutist and a performer. And so I was lying in bed that night and just reading through all of these brochures, and I came across the Fulbright Foundation brochure, and it said in the beginning of the pamphlet, that it's recommended for scholars to have background in the language of the country that they would like to go to. And I thought, well, I have studied a lot of Spanish. I had actually not officially finished a minor in Spanish, but close to it. And so I was like, okay, let's go to Spain. So I looked up Spain and to see what the requirements would be. And they said very specifically that they were only looking for physicians and scholars in the medical field. And so I was like, well, that won't work. And where else can I look? And Latin America, of course. And so I was thumbing through those countries, and I came across Peru, and to be honest, I was like, gosh, where is Peru? Like in the lineup on that Pacific Ocean side. And but I tell you, it said musicians are specifically encouraged to apply. to play in the National Symphony Orchestra and to teach at the National Conservatory. And I just felt like the heavens had opened up for me. And I could hardly sleep that night. I thought, oh my gosh, this is like so terrific. And so I began the process of applying for the grant to go to Peru. That was a really fabulous turning point for me. And when I arrived in Peru, those opportunities were really, really special. It was not always easy because here I was, a foreign person coming in, and we can all appreciate that kind of situation where, like, hey, it should be us folks that are from here that are having these opportunities. And so there was a little bit of a dance there, and practicing diplomacy and that sort of thing. But I played for the conductor of the orchestra, and he put me in the principal flute position, wow, which was thrilling. And there were kind of amazing opportunities where the U.S. Embassy cultural attaché spoke to me also when I arrived and said, what would you like to do while you're here? And I said, well, I'd love to perform and teach as much as possible. And so through the embassy, they set up a whole series of tours for me within the country to perform at the United States Peruvian binational centers. And so it was a lot of really beautiful things unfolded, a lot of wonderful opportunities. And I think that I just pretty much told everybody that I came into contact with that, I'd like to do as much as possible. That first year, there was a horn player from the United States that had been playing in the orchestra. He had left just before I arrived. And he had started this small horn festival and performed at one of the binational centers there. And I attended, and so did my colleague in the orchestra, Cesar Vivanco. And it was like, oh my gosh, we've got to do this for flute, and so that's kind of where that all started with the flute festivals. And it was a fabulous venture that I was involved with for about 10 years. And then
you stayed there for 10 years?
Well, okay. The festivals I was involved with for about 10 years. Pardon me. The grant is supposed to be just a year long. And there was so much fabulousness going on musically in Peru, not just within the classical music, but within the realm of all of the folk music. And oh my goodness, Latin America is full of fabulous folk flutes, indigenous flutes. And so I expressed my interest in studying that with the the Fulbright Commission down there. And they said, well, great, why don't you apply for an extension, and we'll extend your grant for a second year. So I got to stay then with the orchestra and continue to teach, but I also studied the indigenous flutes.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, that was a fabulous experience too. And that's something that it led then to my graduate assistantship for my doctorate. And I still play those flutes and incorporate them in master classes and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, it really served as a beautiful catalyst for so many wonderful experiences.
Yeah.
And I met my husband there too. So
I was going to say, you probably met a lot of great people that you stay in touch with, but your husband is a good one too.
Yeah, it's my second home. But then actually the getting back to what the support that I received from the U.S. Embassy, they also not only sent me throughout Peru to give concerts, but throughout Latin America. Mm. And so in that way, I was able to meet the other Latin American flutists. Just with all of the contacts that we kept building, I was able to invite people down to the festival, and Cesar and I would work together to coordinate that. And I had a fabulous student while I was there, Pablo Acosta, and he became a member of our board and worked with us. And he works in marketing, and so he was a wonderful help. What's been really cool is the flutists that I invited, that I had met through either our NFA conventions or the embassy sponsored tours. They have created their own branches of the festival idea, and so I was able to attend the first Brazilian International Flute Festival, and actually my friend Luciano Carrera in Ecuador, he has been doing it nearly as long as the Peru festivals, and I've attended lots and lots of his, and
I interviewed Daniel Velasco, who kind of got his start there as well.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely, yeah. Daniel was a student then, and what was really fun is that my mother, as soon as my grant ended, after the 2 years, I was supposed to go to Guatemala on an embassy trip, but my mother unfortunately developed congestive heart failure, and so I had to hurry home and be with her while she was convalescing from heart surgery, and that happens to be in the town with from the University of Northern Iowa, where I did my bachelor's degree. And Angelita Floyd was teaching there at that time, and I had never met Angelita. I was before her time. And so while I was helping my mom out, she actually worked at the Office of International Studies there at the university. And so I just sat in her position while she was convalescing, and I would help her then in the evenings and such. And so since I was on campus, I met Angelita and we got acquainted, and I then invited her to Peru to the festival. And then I had invited Luciano, and so then she met Luciano, and then Luciano invited her to Ecuador, and then there was Daniel, and so that's the way it all works. It's just so great in the flute world that way, in music in general, but flutists, I think, in general, have generous spirits.
So you mentioned your mother and her heart issues, kind of bringing you back to the States. You also have some children. How do you balance having all these things going on and not feeling the need to drop everything to focus on family and still have a career? Seems like you've done a lot.
It's true. I'll tell you what, I think that most of us kind of have a general plan, as we're going through school, about our vision about how we want things to play out. And I just really hope to be encouraging to flutists that are in that process now, and just to let you know that if it doesn't unfold the way you had it all planned, it can still be really cool. And you can have great experiences. So, for example, as soon as I finished my doctorate, a month later, we discovered that I was pregnant. And that was also at the same time where I was doing a sabbatical replacement for Angelita at Northern Iowa. So I was getting to play with my former professors, and that was such a great experience. So, but there I was, I didn't really know what tack to take in terms of how to proceed with my career, because our precious son was unexpected and on his way. And so while I was pregnant, I was able to continue and do the festival in Peru, because I was just at that right time where it was safe to fly, and I was far enough along, but not too far, and that sort of thing. And so I was able to keep that going. And then Sweet Jacob came early. And so I really did put things on hold, for those initial months. But I continued to practice and keep my finger in the pie for the festivals, kind of thing. And I didn't seek other full-time jobs at that point. And so we were living on graduate student income, and doing that classic kind of life, but it was great. And I was still doing small things to stay in touch with the career. And, I was in a university town, and so I would be in touch with the flute professor there, and, just do small things. And I remember so vividly, there was a book that had a title that was like, you can have it all, just not all at once.
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart, and I thought, okay, I'm going to stay involved just enough so that I can be present here with my little guy, but still be involved with my flute. While both boys were little, I would write them little stories or little poems and that sort of thing. And what's fun is that now, of course, that wasn't musically related, but it was a source of creativity for me, or an outlet rather. And now that they are both in their 20s and out of the house, I'm using those stories and creating music for them. And as a rostered artist for the Pennsylvania Arts Council, I created with one of my stories, I collaborated with a friend who's an artist, and she created illustrations, and I created a musical background, and then I narrated the stories. And the site for where it takes place is in the Andes. The Arts Council and the schools can use it as a cultural entity for social studies. So, I think it's really important to allow yourself to be as creative as possible, even if it's not directly music related, because then you can have these full circle kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more important to, have a vision or a plan, but not get so caught up in the details of things going off course a little bit, but staying the course and sticking with it and not feeling discouraged because things didn't go exactly the way you planned. Sometimes things come out even better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And that actually, when you think about it, this creating the music for the background of the stories also kind of created an impetus for me to say, well, maybe I should compose a little bit of music or something like that. And that has actually been something that's been a whole lot of fun and has really flourished. And again, it's just I want to encourage everybody to just, if you get an inkling for an idea, to follow through with it. If you leave yourself open and have a little bit of gumption, really beautiful things can happen.
Or you kind of push through or get past like an imposter syndrome, and so many things can happen. Because I think it happens, especially to artists, it happens a lot where you're really hard on yourself because you don't think you're quite good enough, or like no one's going to want to see this or hear this. And if you just tell that voice in your head to be quiet and just try, so many things can happen.
Well, it's true. And I guess part of what gave me a little bit of permission to march forward was the fact that I've been put in a position of having to perform music that really didn't necessarily resonate with me. And so I thought, well, there's something out there for everybody. Maybe what I am kind of feeling about what I like, maybe somebody else will latch onto that too. So
Right. So through all these experiences, you have met a lot of people, and kind of fast forward to recent history or the present day, you have your book, It's Performance Day, which you ended up interviewing tons of flutists around the world, people that I look up to and have, listened to recordings of to, figure out how I want to sound. So I'm very jealous that you got to, talk to all those people, but also it must be somewhat intimidating to speak to some of them who you didn't know too. How did the book come about in the first place?
Well, I will credit a couple of my students with kind of creating the spark for that, because I wanted, they would ask me all these questions and about, one student of mine, Cecilia Leskowitz, she had attended a master class and she said, why didn't you ever tell me about the banana thing? And I said, the banana thing? What are you talking about? And she said, eating bananas before you play because it gives you good energy. And I'm like, oh, that banana thing, and I said, well, apples also have potassium, which is good for your muscles and can do the same thing. It doesn't have to just be bananas. And I thought, it's all these things that when students start having the opportunity to perform or audition, it's like we know how to prepare to get up to that date, but then what do you do with yourself all day long so that you can feel right? And so those kinds of questions inspired me to kind of put together my own thoughts so that I could really share them in an organized way. But I thought, I should just start asking my colleagues what they do too. So I came up with 8 different questions. And because of my experiences with the flute festivals for so many years and the flutists I met that way, and also being involved with the NFA a lot and attending, auditioning as a student, auditioning to be in master classes and all of that sort of thing. That's how you start making your network. And I just reached out to folks, and during the convention, I'm trying to remember which convention it was. I think it was one of the DC convention. I did type up a bunch of letters to all of the flutists that I knew were going to be there performing, that I thought would be interested in participating in the interviews and that sort of thing. And it was kind of miraculous for me. I would say like 99% of the people responded, which is such a gift. And some that I had just met briefly, I got better acquainted with, and others I was meeting them for the first time, and it was, I like, for example, Walter Auer. He was at the Miyazawa party, and so I introduced myself. You have to be a little bit bold, and I introduced myself and said, I'm working on this book. Would you be interested in participating? And he was lovely. He was absolutely lovely. And I will share probably one of the most unnerving experiences I had in the interview process was with Ian Anderson. Oh, so he was terrific. He was just terrific. And we had made arrangements for a phone interview. So I had my recording device all set up. I tested it a variety of times. And we had the phone call initiate. And sure enough, I could tell that it wasn't working. And he was just down to business with the interview. And so I was just writing as fast as I could, trying to catch every last word. And, because I wanted to be absolutely to the T. And so, we talked for about half an hour, and it was a fabulous interview. But I was so nervous. And so I spoke with my brother afterwards, and he said, well, now we have to make sure you have to read to me what you have written down. So because I am acquainted with him, I will be able to determine whether or not you actually captured his proper manner of description, and that sort of thing. So that was a little unnerving for me, but it was a really beautiful experience. And I tried multiple times to make connections with the Galways, and they're such beautiful people and so extremely busy. And it was hard to catch them at the right time, but they really provided some lovely insights. And I'm really grateful for Sir James. He wrote the foreword to the book. And so that was really, I grew up idolizing him, right? And so it's like you've described. It's these people that you just really have admired from afar, some of them farther than others, but I have to say that most everyone had a really generous spirit.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I loved the contrast between some people who had such specific, almost like to-do list style things they did that day, and some people were just, every performance is the same. I just do it.
Yeah, it's really true. It's really true, and yeah, just their attitudes. I would say for the most part, while they all had special individual attitudes, they all came from I don't want to say the same heart, but one of giving. And that was so beautiful to me, because that's, for me, whenever I play, it's a prayer, and some prayers are more fervent than others, but I just, it's giving to humanity to make our world a more beautiful place. And that was a common theme.
Yeah.
Which was really special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you also have the Flutopia Initiative as well. Can you tell us more about that? I know that you did the 5K this year at the Chicago NFA. Tell us more about Flutopia.
Okay. Well, Thank you for asking. The Flutopia Initiative is something that I started 10 years ago. And actually, I was meeting with a group of friends for a Bible study every week, and a handful of them are physicians, and they were doing these beautiful things, helping out in like Nicaragua with women's health and that sort of thing. And I just, I listened to what they would share with such great admiration, and I kept thinking, here I am, a flutist. What could I possibly do that would be have such an important impact like that? And I don't know. I guess I was given the insight that I could use music as a vehicle to support folks that do things like that. So, so the very first event that I held was a food bank concert, and I invited a bunch of the area professionals and actually a choir from the high school to perform, and we collected tons of food and money, and so we got off to a really lovely start. And my mother was very musical, and my father was a track and cross country coach. And so, and they're both no longer living. And so as a tribute to them, I came up with this idea of having a 5K race where I plant musicians all around the route. Right. And so that's where the Flutopia 5K started. And I've done that for 10 years here in State College. And it's really been fun. Here in State College, we benefit our Center County Volunteers in Medicine. So that's how I help the folks that can't afford their medical insurance and such like that.
It's wonderful.
So yeah, and so in 2016 we started doing concerts on the eve of each convention with the same idea, and so I would tap into the program chairs have always been very generous with sharing the list of performers with me that I might be able to ask or invite to perform for that concert. And I Google the different charities that are happening in each host city and read through what they're, all the things that they do, and eventually choose a charity that we support. And so anyone who attends, the concerts are always free to the public, but folks are invited to provide donations. So we've been able to support some really wonderful organizations across the United States, helping folks that don't have proper housing or don't have medical insurance, or actually we did 2 virtual versions during the pandemic, and helped out folks with children with cancer and that sort of thing. So it's worked out to be a lot of fun. And I had been asked a handful of years ago if I would consider putting on the 5K for the 50th anniversary convention. And I thought, oh my gosh, in another city, I don't really know how to do that. But, again, you start asking, and then you're led to the right people. And so I was able to find this fabulous company that was able to help us get it all set up with the proper permits and all that sort of thing. And we were able to do it. And that particular, event, we're able to support both, 5K, and 50K. 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 the NFA for the Diversity and Inclusion Scholarship Committee, and an organization, a local organization called Resilience, that they are advocates for victims of sexual violence. And so I am so pleased that we were able to garner enough support to have some hefty donations. So
that's great.
Yeah. So that's what we do. So it's really just primarily 2 events a year, but trying to make a positive impact.
Yeah, we definitely are. Then that's part of the reason we started doing this series, and what inspired me was to kind of find people who are not, quote unquote famous, I think, who are doing really important things and kind of highlight that work. So thank you for everything you're doing, because I read a very short version of your bio, but you do so much and stuff that we didn't even have a chance to talk about today either.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I have to say that, I don't know if you're aware, but it was a real privilege for me. The NFA did choose to recognize the work with the Flutopia Initiative via the Golden Anniversary Awards.
Yeah.
And that was such a privilege for me. But it's like you say, there are so many people out there doing really neat things that are having such a positive impact. I felt like I wanted to say that I would receive that award on behalf of everybody else, because there's so many folks that do fabulous things and don't get recognized for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to keep working on recognizing more of them. That's my goal.
That's great. Thank you for that. That's great.
Well, thank you again for doing this today. I encourage everyone watching to check out Cathy's book. It's Performance Day, and also all the other wonderful things she's doing out there. And thank you again so much for doing this with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's a real privilege, and I'd love to hear from anybody. If anybody has comments or questions, I'm here for you.
Great. And I'll put some info in our description of this video so people can reach out to you and more info so they can find your website and everything.
Great. That's very nice. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to get to visit with you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn more about our guests, there's more information below. If you're a teacher, make sure to sign up for Club FCNY to unlock free shipping, extended trials, and commission for teachers, as well as other exclusive benefits for you and your students. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe.